if we get to a point where it becomes a fact that they're not Russian, Chinese, or American, maybe that's disclosure as people define it. I don't know, but I think we're moving towards that point.
This video is all about the question, what is disclosure? Now, Leslie Kean, who of course was one of the journalists to break the New York Times article in December 16th, 2017, presented a possibility of what disclosure encompasses, which is it becomes a fact that some of these UFOs simply are not originating from adversaries and therefore are originating from outside the human race. And I would say that that is not disclosure. That instead is UFO confirmation. Now, we all have to agree on the reality that what disclosure is may be different for everyone, because it's not a word you can look up in the dictionary within this context and we can all settle on a singular definition. I'm of this school that I think Elizondo has popularized, which is disclosure is a process and not an event. And at the very minimum, this has been my definition of disclosure for years. So, for example, in my last video, I asked the question, will the year 2022 be a big year for disclosure? That doesn't mean that we need UFO confirmation for it to be a big year for disclosure, since disclosure is not UFO confirmation. Disclosure is the process of making progress for greater transparency and understanding of this enigma. So, for example, when we received a UFO report in June of 2021, that was a part of the disclosure process. Earlier, when the Navy created new guidelines for pilots to report their sightings without having any fear of repercussions, that was disclosure as part of the process. Now, we know that Congress is going to get briefed regularly on this issue as other personnel within the government. That is disclosure. UFO confirmation is distinct. UFO confirmation is where we get forensic proof demonstrating on a scientific level where the result is there's a consensus that, hey, yeah, some of these UFOs simply do not originate from humanity. We know that now. Scientifically, completely objectively, it's no longer a hypothesis. That's not disclosure. That's UFO confirmation. Now, can the word disclosure mean UFO confirmation? Yes, but it would have to be in a very specific context. For example, my channel is called Post-Disclosure-World. In that context, disclosure would be referencing UFO confirmation because it's emphasizing the world after disclosure. Well, we're having disclosure all the time. So obviously post-disclosure world is not referencing disclosure as a process, but as an event, which is more accurately described as UFO confirmation. But barring contexts like that, from my perspective, disclosure is not a singular event, moment, or day. Disclosure is a process. Now, can disclosure heat up? Of course it can. I think disclosure has heated up since the December 16th, 2017 New York Times article published. And it has continued in that trajectory. Now, I will admit that when this whole thing started, technically on October 11th, 2017, when To the Stars Academy had their press conference with an incredible array of high-level government officials, as well as the number 2 guy from Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, my mind was blown. And then we had the New York Times article come out. We learned about ATIP, that it was a lie and completely inaccurate that the U.S. government desisted looking into this subject with the close of Project Blue Book in 1969. So I was blown away, and I will admit that back then, I thought disclosure, or more accurately, UFO confirmation would happen sooner, okay? I thought it would happen much sooner. I didn't think it would take 10 years or 7 years. I thought it would take years is what I think was basically my feeling. And I was wrong about that. And that was a miscalculation on my part. In fact, here's a quote from Elizondo where he really speaks in a very mature and worldly way about the challenge of disclosure and that it's not something that happens overnight, which in retrospect makes a lot of sense because, and I'll share that quote with you in a moment, but it makes a lot of sense because we are dealing with an issue that potentially, because I can't prove it, but it is my opinion, has been kept under wraps for many, many decades, potentially going back 70 plus years by the US government. And so this idea that it would be rapid after we just began to make renewed progress with October 11th is a little bit overly idealistic. And so back then I did think disclosure would happen with relative quickness. And I think I was being a little overly idealistic. But anyways, here's a great quote from Elizondo. Now, to the hardened ufologists out there that, want to see alien bodies and all that stuff, look, I hate to say it, but you got to get realistic, okay? I've said from day one, this whole effort's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if you don't have the stomach for it, look, my recommendation to you is to check out for 5 years, go pick up a hobby, go play the violin, go learn to play the piano, and then in 5 years, come back and check in because this is not going to happen overnight. But if you look at just the last 4 years of how far we've come, we really have come a long, long way. And those forces of resistance in the Pentagon every single day are dwindling and dwindling. And I got to tell you, I think 2022 is going to be an even better year. We've got so many things planned. I think it's just going to be an absolute knockout year. I'd like to go down memory lane with you and briefly discuss a video that I published on December 28th, 2017, over 4 years ago. And furthermore, this video was published only a month into my coverage of the renewed progress that was being made on the UFO front. And so it's funny to me because there are people who have tried to use this video to own me, to declare how I made these predictions that never came to pass. Well, the video was ridiculous. I presented it in like a really fun way. So I think the context was at least somewhat clear that it wasn't meant or intended to be taken seriously. And it was more of me just presenting hypotheticals that could come true, but not necessarily that I believed would come true or that I even believed at all. As far as I recollect, it really was just a thought experiment about what could happen in the year 2018. And it was not intended to be taken seriously. And before I discuss it in a little more depth, let me show you the opening of this video, which I think paints a pretty good picture that it was not meant to be taken seriously.
2018, 2018, 2018.
In 2018, everything changes. Here are my 5 disclosure predictions for 2018. Let's go! Yeah, so I do regret not explicitly stating in that video that these are merely hypotheticals, but that was, from what I can recollect, was really the spirit of the video, as opposed to me being like, hey, y'all, this is really what's going to happen. I know that this is going to happen. And I think people took the video out of, some people took the video out of context to make a point about me, which is sort of funny because it's like, if you're going to try to make a point about someone, why would you go to like literally their oldest videos, right when they were starting out and testing the waters and experimenting, as opposed to going to their more recent videos that presents the topic in a way that they've grown and evolved to present it. So there seems to be a little bit of a disingenuousness there when people do that, when those videos are so old, but it is what it is. You know, it's the nature of the beast. So in an effort to be as objective as I can, I watched that video again just now, and I went through the comments, and I'm still under the impression that I was presenting it as hypotheticals. Maybe I was optimistic some of this would happen, but I don't think that I had this position that it was definitely going to happen, even though there is one point where I said definitely in my video. But here's a comment that I found that I think relays that I was basically giving hypotheticals. Also, I think some or a lot of these predictions will bleed into 2019 because it always takes a bit more time and resources and planning to do good over evil, brother. To which I respond, perhaps. However, we're entering unprecedented territory, so this may be the one time it all happens incredibly quickly. In the final analysis, the video was silly. It was right at the beginning of me making YouTube videos, just when the UFO subject was starting to have renewed progress. And I would never make a video like that again, so that's that. To end this video, I just want to share a short excerpt by author Douglas Dean Johnson. It underscores that we are absolutely in new territory, and what's unfolding now is not merely a repetition from the past as it pertains to UAP, but it's actually unprecedented. And I think it's important that I do this because for some reason there are some people out there who are adamant that this is more of the same, when in actuality it's not more of the same. The title of this article is Congress Tells Pentagon and Intelligence Community UFOs Are Serious Business, and it's about the legislation that led to the new UAP office. It was published on December 7th, 2021. Enactment of this language would be unprecedented. Congress has never before enacted any statutes that deal explicitly with UFOs or unidentified aerial phenomena. To the extent that various government agencies have dealt with UAP incidents or sought to manage public concerns about UAP, they have done so under their general operating authorities as they interpret them. In recent years, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence has prodded the Pentagon and intelligence community with language in committee reports, but enactment of sweeping statutory mandates will elevate the subject matter of UAP into an entirely new realm. It's been just over 4 years now, and the escalation and how far we've gone is undeniable, indisputable. And so sometimes I get comments on my YouTube videos like, You've been saying disclosure is going to be happen forever. When is it going to happen? Well, first of all, disclosure has been happening for 4 years, and in a very big and dramatic way, I may add. And as far as, you know, how am I going to move forward with this? Like, am I going to continue covering this issue because it's quote unquote going nowhere? Well, if you think it's going nowhere, then you must live in a different universe than I do, because it has continued to escalate in major and in incredible ways. So I'm going to continue to cover this. I'm going to continue to keep my hand on the pulse of the disclosure process as I perceive it. And if there were nothing to UAP and they were just conventional drones from an adversary with conventional technology, then I would imagine that the government would just initiate reining it all in, because it really makes them look bad when they suddenly change their narrative on this issue. So the indication to me is that there's a there, and that the government is going to continue in a trajectory where they become more transparent with the American public and the world at large, partly because they have no choice. Basically, the U.S. Congress is demanding answers and is also livid that they're now just being told about these mysterious objects that are being detected by our military sensors. And as far as UFO confirmation is concerned, it doesn't have to come from the government. It could come from Project Galileo with Professor Avi Loeb. It could come from UAPX. It could come from a mass sighting. But the idea is that the U.S. government has forensic proof through military sensors. And why has the military been able to attain this smoking gun evidence but not your average Joe? My best answer is, I really don't know. But in my opinion, that's what the evidence points to. Maybe they just have much better systems to collect data on UAP. Or maybe part of it is because UAP are attracted to nuclear energy, power, missiles, weapon depots, and so forth, which has been documented for decades now. That's all I got to say about this. And I ask that if you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You can become a patron. You can become a YouTube member. You can even just give me a one-time donation. All those possibilities are in the links below. Or you can just slap a like on this bad boy, and I will appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.